Hi, this is Lorraine, and I'm doing another video. If you'll give me a second to clear center and balance my energy, we'll get started. Okay, so I'm just going to go into my journal. There's so much information coming in right now that I really don't have enough time to write it all down. I mean, because it just comes in and it's there. And it can take hours if I'm writing out every little bit of information that comes in to write it, and it literally is in a split second. And so I've just been taking like brief notes and not as being as diligent as writing down every little detail, because it's so much information, but it's also, I don't always get every little detail. Okay, so I'm just going to start. And so November 28th, I think that was the day after my last video. Information comes in. My traumas are source energies traumas. Memory, or the trauma, fades as we release the emotions connected to it. So a lot of traumas we experience in the moment, we carry those memories, and as we hold on to those memories, we keep reliving that trauma. And as we relive that trauma, we will literally manifest that same energy through our emotions as we experience the trauma. And that's what makes PTSD so powerful in controlling this world and keeping us in this trauma and fear-based mindset and feeling of separation and alienation. Keeps us separate from one another in our trauma. So as we deal with our traumas, and as these memories begin to fade, as we start to release the trauma, we release the emotions connected to it. Okay, so the memory and the trauma fades, and we release the emotions connected to those memories and those traumas. Memories of Zeta Reticuli and Alpha Draco living from separation. The timelines are the timelines related to the Zeta Reticuli and the Alpha Draco living from separation are physical manifestations of the memories divinity is working on releasing. The Zeta Reticuli and Alpha Draco living from separation represent the internal battle being experienced by divinity, consisting of light and dark, separation and unification on a universal macro cosmic scale, right? So just the same way our memories, so let me just finish reading this. Our inner battles with light and dark, separation and unification represent the inner battle on a microcosmic scale. Okay, and so this is asking you to shift your paradigms and your perception of our reality, basically. Just the same way we have this internal battle of light and dark, just the same way we have this internal battle of good and bad, the traumas that we have experienced and what that means and how those define us. Just the same way we have those internal battles, divinity has those internal battles, and those internal battles are manifested in different timelines. Our internal battles are manifested in our memories of those experiences, our perception of our memories in those experiences, and how those memories define us. right? And so in the last video, I talked a lot about pain, sadness, betrayal of trust, self-loathing, all those things as being potentially defining factors of me that I might carry of myself as I relive and think about these traumas. And it's not until I find perspective for those experiences and release those traumas that I can truly move back to center. Okay, and that's all part of this process of healing. Okay. The process of healing is about finding perspective for our experiences. And I talked about that in the last video when I talked about my childhood traumas and how that I felt, how that traumatized me, created fear, insecurity, aggression, alienation, and then how my poor choices or my experiences in the future, how after my own traumas as an adult, and how other people were judging me and alienating me and making me feel once again like how I felt when I was a child, sad, alienated, betrayed, and how I reconcile those perspectives to make sense so that I can release those emotions attached to those memories. And once I release those emotions attached to those memories because I found perspective, then I could truly move forward. And those things don't control me, manipulate me, or hold me in any one state of being, in one state of mind. Okay? So let me reread that really quick. The Zeta Reticuli and Alpha Draco living from separation represent the internal battle being experienced by divinity, consisting of light and dark, separation and unification, or light versus dark, separation versus unification on a universal macrocosmic scale. Our inner battles with light and dark, separation and unification represent the inner battle on a microcosmic scale. And for this reason, only one is needed, the one that keeps the light shining. And the parallel I made was like in the movie Rise of the Guardians. I don't know if you've ever seen that. It's all about how this darkness tries to usurp the light of the holidays, of Christmas, of Easter, of the Tooth Fairy, the Sandman, all these positive energies supporting children and their the milestones they go through in their lives growing up, pre-puberty. This negative energy comes in and tries to douse it. And as long as one child still believes that light and that spirit of that goodness of what Christmas, Easter, and all those other events in childhood events represent still remains alive. And that's the same thing, that's a good parallel for what this message is as long as there's one light still bright in the universe, that source energy, that unconditional love, that homeostatic state of divinity always exists and always prevails. Okay? It's the unifying force, it's the unifying field that is source energy. Next, all energy is drawn to the light, even those supporting separation, but they resist. The magnetism to the light protects it from the darkness. The magnetic attraction towards the light repels or peels away the darkness. Okay, so that magnetic attraction towards the light repels or peels away the darkness or the negativity, this idea of separation, however you want to see it. Okay, as that energy is drawn towards the light, whatever negativity is connected to it is peeled away. Okay? Because nothing consisting of darkness or negativity can exist in the light. Okay? Nothing of negativity, nothing of darkness, nothing of separation exists in the light. If you shine a flashlight anywhere, there is no darkness in the light. There may be shadows on the outside, but there is no darkness in the light. You can see this as a fail-safe, like a moth to a flame. And then I had a vision of, and then I had sound. Sound is the next thing. So this was such a powerful and definitive vision or spiritual experience I had. I was not even at home. I think I was at work. And I all of a sudden, I saw myself walking in or down an ear canal. And then I see myself, and then I'm walking down the hill, and I'm like, this is very strange. And then the next thing you know, I'm standing, then I see myself outside the ear, just below the earlobe, just like right here, right in this spot right here. Hanging, I wasn't really hanging beneath it, because I could just see, I was like almost standing right here. I wrote hanging beneath it, but I wasn't hanging. I was just kind of standing right here, and I could see this connection right here. That where the earlobe connects to the, I don't know, the head, the neck, the jaw. It was a lesson in perception. Walking down the ear canal in tunnels, sitting outside the ear. And I wrote air instead of ear, implying different environments and or atmospheres. And that was something that just came in really strong. How would you draw that connection? Like, just because I wrote air instead of ear, it's like, I was like, oh, I wrote air, not ear, and I corrected it. And then as soon as I made that correction, this energy just comes into my body, very clairsentient. It represents the different environments or atmospheres, and it meant the earth and the universe, meaning even within the earth there are different places within the heart of Mother Earth that have completely different atmospheres than to what we experience on the surface. The same thing in the universe. There are different planets with different atmospheres, different environments in the universe. Okay, and the only thing you can draw from this, the only conclusion you can draw from this, is that these atmospheres or environments are meant for other beings, not for humans. They're not meant for us. They're meant for other beings in the universe to live in. Okay, and that goes back to what I was talking about, how eventually we'll have many other beings, and eventually all beings in the universe will reside on this world, and our DNA will be integrated into their DNA. And at some point, we are being seeded throughout the universe, and at some point these energies will come back home. They will come back to Earth, because Earth is their home, just like it's our home. Okay, this is not a planet, this is not the planet of humanity. This is not, we don't own this planet. We are stewards of this world, and we care for Mother Earth. It is a very important world in the universe, and eventually there will be many other beings of many other worlds living here. And it is our responsibility to take care of this world. And the raptors and Gladiolus and her people are very important components of this. And right now I don't have a lot of information on how the Alpha Draco living from Unity are a part of this, but I know right now they are a necessary part of this transcendence, because it was their world that brought the negativity. So karmically, these Alpha Draco living from Unity are responsible to come here and help us through this transition. But only the Alpha Draco living from Unity. And then, and then I had a note here on the side. I wrote universal perception. So our perception is moving from just this micro perspective of Earth being isolated, alienated from the rest of the universe, to now we have to open ourselves up to this universal community. Okay. So then the raptors come into mind. Inner earth, dark caves, and caverns, also noting the healing spaces. So when I saw that ear canal, I have to be, what I honestly thought of is when I go down into the raptor part of the earth, I'm always walking through tunnels or caverns. I think tunnels are better. They're very dark and very dark, so much that I can't see, but I can feel, I can tell that the walls, how the walls look, and I can tell where I'm going. So these dark caves, these inner earth dark caves and caverns, also noting the healing spaces, versus the Alpha Draco My Little Pony world. Above ground pastel colors like a Candyland meets Middle Earth. And the juxtaposition between these two reptilian energies and the similarities was what the intention was to talk about. But I have to be honest, I had a lot of other information coming in that kind of moved me into different directions. But I do feel like eventually that'll come up through this video, but right now I'm just going, and I didn't really write a lot about that, but I just need to follow the flow of what was written. And so I have a quote, "She's not for eating." So this is something I didn't bring up in the last video. I was talking about astral traveling to that Alpha Draco, living from Unity World, and how it was very much like the colors were very pastel, and it was very green, and there was a big castle, and it reminded me, or a big structure that might be perceived as a castle. It was very beautiful. It reminded me of my daughter's My Little Pony, like world, or when she used to play. It just reminded me of that. And what I didn't say in the last video was that I kept on hearing, as soon as they brought me up from the side, and we greeted one another, and we started walking that procession with the escorts. As soon as we started walking, I kept on hearing someone say, "She's not for eating, she's not for eating." Like they kept on running it through their head to remind themselves, right? And I thought that was so funny. I was laughing. And I didn't say it in the last video because maybe it wasn't appropriate. I just didn't feel like I should say it, so I didn't. But definitely in this video, it came through. I should talk about that. And again, I wasn't like scared in any way when I was moving through this situation. I thought it was funny. And so it says, just like the notes I have, she's not for eating. Just like cows, deer, sea life, etc. here on this world are potential food sources, who's to say that there were not humanoid beings placed on the Alpha Draco world as food sources? Even Earth. Humans could have been placed on the earth for food sources when the dinosaurs existed, right? We don't know, they're these large creatures. Maybe there were humans as well as other types of food sources for the dinosaurs, because they were carnivorous, right? Some were omnivores, some were carnivores, some were herbivores, so you had to have food sources. So who's to say that there weren't humans placed on the earth 125 million years ago to feed the dinosaurs, okay? At earlier stages of evolution, they meaning the Alpha Draco, most likely thought they were the center of the universe, just like humans. They probably also thought life on other worlds was inconceivable. Why would the lesser or lower life forms on their world be utilized as anything other than food and or labor sources? Just the same way we eat cows and we eat chickens and we eat fish. We use horses, mules, cows, bulls for labor. why wouldn't the Alpha Draco use whatever animals were considered lower life forms for food or for labor at the 3D level where we were? Okay, that makes perfect sense to me. Step outside the paradigms and perspectives. See the world and universe from a different place. All right, so we need to see the world and the universe from a different place, because I watch a lot of these. I used to watch some of these shows, like specifically on Gaia, the Cosmic Disclosure, the early ones. With David Wilcock and Corey Good, where they were like, "Oh, they eat people. The reptiles eat people." Well, we eat cows. We eat fish. We eat many of these meats. So if we went to other worlds and we saw a cow, why wouldn't we eat it? As long as we knew it wouldn't kill us, right? Because that's what our flavors are for, are towards pigs, boar, right? It makes perfect sense. So why are you offended or surprised that these reptiles would eat humans when that was the food source on their world? Okay? You have to open your mind to the truth that you are not the center of the universe. That there are many beings in the universe that exist, and their perspectives are different from ours. And what we have to start learning right now is that we're becoming part of this universal community. And how do we integrate into this universal community? Love, compassion, kindness, openness, honesty, integrity. Because especially the raptors and the reptiles, once they know that you live from integrity, you have nothing to worry about. But if you're a threat to them or their people, they're going to protect their people. Okay? And they will do so lethally if necessary. Whether or not they eat what they kill is a whole other thing. But they will protect their people. Okay? Shift perception. To perceive and receive information through the eyes, ears, nose, taste, touch is limited and readily manipulated and or distorted through paradigms and tools of indoctrination. Look through your heart. Perceive with your soul. Rooted in and a product of divine source energy. I think that's the most important message in this whole video. You don't even have to watch the rest of the video. If you can understand and live by this one simple idea, to look through your heart and perceive with your soul, because these things are rooted in and a product of divine source energy. Okay? Just the same thing as I am everything, everywhere, and nowhere. I permeate all things. Unified always, never apart. The second I knew and understood that I am a part of all things, that I represent all things, that I am everything and nothing, I had to see the world from a different place. I had to see the universe from a different place and understand my interconnectedness to all things. Okay, it completely changes your perspective once you see, know, and understand that. Okay, 11:30. So I have a friend. That I know. How do I say this? So I know he's a veteran, but I don't really talk too much about, we don't talk about that at all. But I know he has a lot of experiences. He's been in the secret space program, and I never ask him about anything. But I do feel super strongly that he was was trained in the special forces, even though he's never mentioned that, which he never would. It's very difficult and painful And I totally get it, so I don't broach that topic. People need to have to be open to talk about it, and open and freely discuss it. You cannot solicit that information. And so I say this because he came in very strong, 11:30, which I don't even know what day that was. And he just said to me, his higher self, things can change on a dime. And he showed me himself. And I think up to this point, a lot of information that I've gotten from him has been through source energy, from divine source energy, trying to help me understand and be more compassionate to his own personal struggles, because we tend to trigger one another through our own traumas. And so I just will distance myself from people when I start tapping into my own trauma, or they start tapping into my trauma, or they trigger it. And so I feel like this source energy comes in quite often and talks to me and teaches me about his traumas, so that I have more compassion and I don't shut down. But this communication was definitely from the higher self, his higher self communicating to me. So the way I would differentiate is source energy in the past has usurped the higher self and just given me the information and trusted that I would be entrusted that I would carry that information with integrity. But now at this point, he has opened up to me. Okay, his higher self has opened up to me. And he showed me himself working through a situation very smoothly, and everything was seemingly okay. So I was actually visualizing him out on one of his military experiences, something he and his group of men were executing. And then everything went to shit. I just have everything went to shit. And then he said, there's no knowing in that moment. Oh, and so the feeling was, there was no knowing in that moment regarding what changed the circumstance, other than 1 minute everything was going as it should, and the next it was total chaos. So I'm sitting here watching him do something. He's moving very smoothly, fluently. Everything's going as planned, and then all of a sudden, total chaos. It's total chaos. And when I say total chaos, I mean there is aggressive interactions where you're fighting for your life, and then he had to neutralize the situation, and then he had to finish what he was doing, and it was very intense. But that was the message to me. He said, things can change on a dime. And so the message, everything will be changing. It will be abrupt and definitive. And the messages, and then for some reason I have clairvoyance, claircognizance, clairsentience, clairaudience, and empathy. All when I received that message from him, I was using all those clairs. And I think maybe sometimes I get these messages to talk about how the messages are coming in, because I've actually had a number of people who know me personally, who watch the videos, ask me, how do you know that you can trust that information? How do you know that your energy is protected? How do you know that negative energies aren't going to be able to permeate that and attack you? Or how do you know the information is accurate? And so, and how's the information coming in? So I feel like sometimes I need to actually talk about that. So that was probably one of the more upsetting messages, primarily because I'm seeing a lot of fives, and fives is not, doesn't carry any one vibration. It's constantly shifting, and fives represent change. And change is abrupt, and but the message was that everything's going to change, so be ready for change. And so as much as I don't like it, I can adapt to anything. And so the message is, be ready for change. It's going to be quick, and you're not going to see it coming. Next, the juxtaposition between caves and sacred spaces and the Alpha Draco world of Middle Earth meets Candyland. And I keep on coming back to that. And then the Raptors came in and they said, stay out. It was a very strong message. And I got another message like this about 2 years ago. I think it was like March or May of 2020. The Raptors said, stay out. The secondary cabal energy thinks they are the new ruling class of Earth and have begun behaving in such a manner. The Raptors, Gladiolas, and her people, the Alpha Draco living from balance, do not acknowledge your authority. Earth has always been under the umbrella of universal law. The primary cabal, along with the Alpha Draco living from separation, were given the opportunity to experience this world, then find their way back to center. Most failed in this endeavor. The secondary cabal thinks they only need to fudge a few things and that this will allow them to maintain their status and remain as the ruling class. That belief is incorrect. So they feel like they just have to shift and change a few things and then they'll be able to stay on top. That's incorrect. Mother Earth moves into balance. Universal law is the way of life on this world. The great battles in Revelation are not a result of any action by the primary cabal energy. These battles or wars are instigated by the secondary cabal energy. These battles are a reflection of their desire to maintain control, remain on top, and oppress the masses. The world around us is a reflection of our thoughts, words, actions, intentions. War is violence, oppression, aggression, action with the intent to control, usurp, cage. War is a reflection of the thoughts, intentions of this secondary cabal, compounded by the fear, insecurity, and desire for safety from humanity. The search for safety from the material plane, specifically government, politicians, law enforcement, money, financial institutions, creature comforts, the ego, self, separation, and not the source of all creation, the divine, promotes separation. This, in turn, creates the world you live in, the discord, violence, segregation, war. You have created a world where life as you know it will change on a dime. Those who are fortifying their connection with the divine are beginning to see, feel, know transcendence. They can sense separation from the 3D. They begin to see themselves as observers, not participants in these events. Divergence. This is the shifting and transitioning of transcendence. This is transcendence. We allow those remaining in the 3D to live out their karmic cycle and end their cycle and move to a new space. Those transcending sit in a place of contemplation, elevate their emotional body, energy field, simultaneously manifest new earth. Meditation or prayer is not a state of rest. There is massive amounts of activity taking place. It is a place of creation. It is a place of beginnings and endings, endings and beginnings. It is where life begins and ends. Those of us working from this place are consciously creating new earth. God bless you. Raptors, once again, come in super strong. Stay out. They only acknowledge those living from the heart, living from balance. They only acknowledge those embodying divine source energy from balance. That is not the secondary cabal energy. They are attempting to portray themselves, this is the secondary cabal, as guardians, protectors of humanity, and more so protectors of the original intentions of our forefathers. They are also trying to convince society that they embrace God, faith, religion. These ideas, paradigms, are the old ways. These concepts, constructs, will not remain. Nothing supporting or promoting separation will remain. Divergence. These two energies are unique and readily identifiable, meaning separation versus unity. Their vibrations are unique. The raptors, gladiolus, alpha Draco living from unity can readily identify the frequencies, vibrations of unity and separation. The vibration of unity solely will be honored. Only the vibration of unity will remain on New Earth. Do not attempt to manipulate or deceive. To knowingly and willingly send individuals into the sacred areas, the localities that support and sustain the raptors, gladiolus, and her people, as well as the alpha Draco living from balance, increases your karmic debt, for you willfully defy the divine. Consequences will be swift. The raptor caverns are sacred spaces. They are spaces for healing. I can see they are dark with light green light emanating from a source I cannot see. The walls look black and shiny as if they were wet. Within the walls there are cubbies where individuals lay for healing. Time is irrelevant. The children spend much time here. So the cubbies are small areas etched into the walls, and time is irrelevant, meaning the amount of time spent there is not important. It is a healing space, and this so the children who the raptors saved and are taking care of spend a lot of time in those healing spaces. This is not our space. We have not earned this privilege. We have no place here. Humanity is to stay out. And so these are spaces where Mother Earth is healing these children. This is not, I hear so much talk about med beds. That is not a universal source healing modality. That is not a Mother Earth healing modality. The sacred spaces that the raptors embody or live within or is part of their community, those are healing spaces, I guess sanctioned by Mother Earth or the source of energy, but those are source energy healing spaces. Those are Mother Earth healing spaces, and those spaces are not ours, and we have no right to them. There is something in the raptor territory on their land or in their possession that these humans covet, meaning the secondary cabal. And this information came to them from being connected to the primary cabal, but the primary cabal left before they got or are leaving before they get stuck in this drama which is happening now with this secondary cabal. So whatever information they got, some type of information that there's something that is coveted heavily in the raptor spaces, and now this secondary cabal is trying to access that. It is not meant for you. You will not possess it. And so I had a vision in a video, I would say maybe a month, 2 months ago that I did. I talked about creation and going to the void and how creation starts, and how this source energy first, it at its homeostatic state, it's just pure existence. It is aware that it exists, okay? But the second that it looks at itself and says, what am I? Or tries to decide, figure out what it is, once it asks that question, that's when creation begins, okay? And the metaphor I gave was as if you're sitting in an egg, okay, like a Fabergé egg, one of those fancy eggs. And as this source energy, you start to visualize yourself. You start to imagine what you could possibly be. And those visions start to reflect on the inside of that egg, okay? Or project onto the inside of that egg. And then as soon as that egg opens, those projections create the universe, okay? Just that's just trying to explain to you, give you a visual about how that happens, okay? So that egg opens. I had a visual of that egg opening on 4 sides, and you could even see that as north, south, east, west. You can see that as water, air, earth, fire, however you want to look at that. But there were 4 leaves that opened, okay? And so I had this vision on the 28th, even though it's out of time. I didn't draw it until the 30th. And I was standing in the middle of the egg, and I had the 4 beings from the heart of Mother Earth, the ginormous, gigantic beings, water, fire, air, earth, that I called in to help me when those negative alpha dragos living from separation came in the last video. They were kind of trying to quash my the protective fields I was putting up, and maybe they were trying to shift the energy back to negativity, separation, and so I was struggling with that, keeping those fields up. So I called in these 4 energies: fire, air, water, earth. And the second I called them in, everything disappeared. All that negativity disappeared. It was instantaneous. It was very profound and beautiful, and made me feel connected to something. It made me feel not so alienated, and I think it helped me shift my perspective. So anyway, what I didn't talk about then, because if I start talking about it, I have to, it's just gonna be too much. I'll have 5-hour videos if I kept talking about things as they came. But as soon as they came in, that egg that I was talking to you about in that previous video, I saw myself standing in the middle of that egg. On each leaf was one of these very large beings in the heart of Mother Earth that protect Mother Earth. They were standing on each of one of the leaves, and then the leaves closed up. So all 5 of us were closed into this egg, okay? And so I talk about the metaphor, the music box, and the mirror. So I guess I used that in that video, that metaphor of the mirrors actually being on the inside of the egg, and it looking kind of like a music box opening up, and like the ballerina would be in the middle. I don't know if people today even know what I'm talking about, but people that are my age will know what I'm talking about. The egg closes, the vision stops, and the cycle ends. So when that egg closed, it told me that it's the end of the cycle. So it represented the ending of this cycle. It represents the end of this negativity, this idea of separation on this world. And I do feel it also represents the end of opportunity to create the change that's needed from within to transcend. Okay, so there has to be some point where the transition happens, where people who have done the work will transcend, and the people who have not fulfilled all of their obligations will need to go to a different world and incarnate on that world and begin the cycle again. And when I saw that egg close, if creation or the starting of the cycle represents the opening, is represented by the opening of that egg, then the closing of the egg represents the end. Okay. I did not see it open, but the feeling is at some point the egg will open, representing the beginning of a new cycle with a new vision for Mother Earth and humanity. So I feel like we're just in an in-between phase. We're in this in-between transition while we allow the negativity, the separation to play out its karmic cycle. So, so I'm just going to say, so I don't know, this seems kind of weird, but I'm just going to say it because when I went to go get my nails done yesterday, I saw the color in my head. As soon as I walked into the shop, I saw the color on the shelf. I picked it out, and the color was See the Lava Flow. And lava, fire, you can see it as the phoenix rising from the ashes, but the lava also destroys and creates at the same time. And so when that happened, like, there are so many synchronicities, I can't deny that message. And I think, again, like I said, when I was talking to you about all the clairs I used when I had that vision before, I think part of this is me giving you information, but it's also about teaching you and showing you and talking to you about how to process and receive the messages and interpret them, okay, and what the clairs are that I use as the messages come in. And so, but then I wanted to also say that so the color represented See the Lava Flow. So here I am with destruction as well as creation. But then it took me back to a vision or an experience I had in 2016, when I realized that my marriage was going to end and that I had to start talking about next steps. Now, I had been going to marital counseling for 2 years. Okay, we had been through marital counseling for 2 years, and I had had actually an individual therapist that I was seeing also for over 2 years. Okay, and so I had just taken the class, that meditation class. It was called a Psychic 1 class, but it was more like it was meditation. It just taught you how to channel and bring the light in, essentially. And so I don't think I was meditating though. I think I was sleeping, and I woke up in the middle of the night. Although I could have, it's been so long, I could have been meditating. And I looked over to my right. I was still laying down, and I saw a black sphere that was about 6 inches in diameter. And I was like, first of all, I thought to myself, how could I see a black sphere at night? It was very weird because it was very dark, yet I could see it. And then that black sphere, it cracked, and it just created this like fissure or right down the middle. And it looked like lava, as if, I don't know if you've seen lava flow, but it looks like rock, and then there's like red lines running through it, right? That's what it looked like. There was like this red line running through this crack in this sphere, and the sphere all of a sudden turned into a rosebud. And then that rosebud bloomed into a flower. And it was red-orange, just like my nail color. And I was like, whoa, because it was literally a foot in front of my face. It was like I was laying down, I'm looking this way, and I've talked to you in the past about, I had so many manifestations in my room when I had this spiritual awakening. It was very upsetting. I was in tears constantly. Tears, oh my God, all the time. And I was just like, wow, I was blown away. And there was a conflict for me because I had decided in that moment when I was like laying there in bed that, yeah, we'd been through so much marital counseling. We've done all we can. And at this point now, my ex-husband is just being tortured. I'm being tortured, trying to force, a square peg into a round hole. It just wasn't working. And the second that I had that epiphany that it was time to, when the next time I went to counseling, that I would need to talk about, I felt I was ready to talk about next steps, that sphere appeared, it cracked, it opened, it turned into a rosebud, and then it bloomed into a rose. And this took about, I would say, 20 seconds, the whole process. And so I had to look up what the color red-orange looked like, symbolized, sorry. And so red obviously means love, and red-orange also means love, but it also means pride. It means pride in your accomplishments, pride in what you've done. So if somebody gives you red-orange roses, it represents that they are so proud of you in what you've done and what you've achieved. And so I'm looking at, and I was conflicted because being raised Catholic, even though I had I released religion and all the paradigms and feeling like I had to go to church every Sunday, even though I was raised doing that most of my life, I was still conflicted about divorce. And because my parents were married my whole life, my grandparents were married for 70 years, my godparents were married for 50. It was just something that was foreign, that I was going to end my marriage, and that I was being rewarded, that it was the source or my angels and guides were showing pride in my decisions. So there was a huge conflict for me, but I knew it was the right thing. I could feel it. And it was the right thing because where I was in my life, I could not move forward on my path and purpose because I had to shut down every part of myself to keep my marriage together. I had to appease my husband because if I disagreed, there was conflict. I was constantly putting out fires. I was constantly feeling like I had to protect my kids from his he could be quite cruel. I was constantly feeling like I had to protect my father because my father was living with us at the time. He had dementia. And it just created, so I knew it was the best thing, but there was still in the back of my mind this conflict with my religious upbringing. In the end, it was the best thing because had I not done that, I would not be where I am today. And I would not be able to release all the traumas in my life because I would still be living within a trauma in my life, right? The other thing was I was going through counseling. I was like, can I continue to tolerate this, my marriage was? And I was like, life isn't about tolerating things. Although my whole life, through all my traumas, all the things, it conditioned me to be able to deal with traumatic situations. Because when you're a child and you're being hurt and nobody's doing anything to change that situation, what am I going to do? 5 years old, run away? No, you figure out, you have to learn to live in that, right? And in my marriage, I had at some point learned to live in it. And I had to say, do I want to keep living in this? Or do I want to create change? Do I want to require or force my children to keep living in this? Or do I want to create change? And we've had to deal with other things since I was divorced. And we had a very comfortable life because my ex-husband had made a good living. But there are certain sacrifices worth making to be able to fuel your soul, okay? And so I've had to spend years trying to work through that, and it's all part of the process of finding perspective and releasing the trauma, okay? And so I just that is another example of finding perspective and releasing the trauma, and also just the synchronicities that the universe provides for us to give us messages, signposts, signals to help us on our path and purpose, okay? The other thing is I'm writing all the time and I have no time for anything else. And sometimes I stop the information from coming in by watching movies. So I started watching The Hunger Games, which I like. It's a good movie. And it's a good movie, but there's a lot of subliminal messaging. And so I wrote some notes about it. I said, throw the dog a bone. They allow such movies to be produced, but only because of all the subliminal messaging. Messaging in words, symbols, music, sounds, clothing, scenery. How you protect yourself from stuff. So the movie's a good movie. It has a lot of... it's very entertaining. There's some good empowering messages in that, but there are also other messages of separation. Okay, and so how do you protect yourself from such messages? Is maintaining clear, centered, and balanced energy and protecting your energy. Most everything on this world is geared to keep you out of balance. Fear, insecurity, anger, greed, desire, coveting. In the movie Wall Street with Michael Douglas, the original, there's a scene where he talks about greed being good. Okay. Now today, with all the anti-heroes, right? All the who's it? I can't remember the name of the character, but anti-heroes. Now we're being desensitized to the darkness, right? By empathizing. They're conditioning us to empathize with these people who are very dark energies, right? Remember, there is light and dark in everything. The key is to maintain balance. So in order to discern light from dark, in order to maintain, discern manipulation, tools of conditioning, you have to maintain clear, centered, and balanced energy. And you have to protect your energy, because if you don't have protective fields around you, negative energy can come in and manipulate you and convince you. And normally it taps into the ego. Okay? And that's how you know you're being manipulated. It's tapping into the ego. It's either tapping into your fears or your desires, bolstering your ego. Okay? Source energy always taps into your heart from a very real place, and it will support you. It helps guide you through your pain. It doesn't ask you to try to forget about it, try to bury it. Okay? Negativity will divert you away from your pain and redirect you to what? Food, spending money, sex, drugs. Those things numb you from your pain. They don't ask you to deal with your pain and release it. Okay? And so the negativity will move you in those directions. They won't move you to healing. Okay? And so as I say that, I want to, message came in today that the Raptors are actually, as a community, are healers. They are healers. That is their purpose on this world. They are healers. And as I say that, the gladiolus and her people, water is very healing. Every time I go into the water, oceans especially, I'm healed, I'm cleared so profoundly. So I think these two energies are put here once this transition happens to help us heal. Okay? I think the Alpha Draco are more about, the living from unity are more about helping us rebuild the structures of our society. Because it was the Alpha Dragos from separation who helped break it down. So they're here to help us restructure our foundations. But the Raptors and Gladiolus and her people definitely here for helping us heal. Okay? And so in the last video I talked about my dad representing more of the Hierophant. I talked about my family and what they what their roles were in my life to help me on my path and purpose. And I talked about my dad representing more of the Hierophant and heart, and my grandfather representing the structures also, but from a very stoic and from a very deep feeling of Alpha Draco energy, very powerful, regal, majestic energy, stoic, very foundational, very powerful. in creating that foundation. And that's what he represented in our family, maintaining the balance and protecting the unit. And I'm only bringing up those two because my dad had that as that energy of love and representing the Hierophant. The Hierophant was more the paradigms and structures of this world. Okay, so the structures grounded in earth. Okay, my grandfather represented more a universal understanding of the structures and foundation. And I think it's very important that both of them are present to show the differences and represent the reconciling of these two ideas of earth as a as its own self-contained community, society, and then the universal structure itself, and then the reconciling of those two. How do you reconcile those two? And so it's very easy for me to see my grandfather and my father, and then I can easily reconcile those two beings in my life and what they represent and who they are as people. And so that will be taken a step further in helping me to reconcile these two ideas of this earthly structures, foundations versus the universal, and reconciling that too. That's called generalization. So I'll generalize the information from my father and my grandfather as two people in my life and what they meant and how important their roles are, and then what they represent, and I'll make that generalization and reconcile that. And I know, I'm not sure if you know what I'm talking about, that's something I learned in teaching kids with special ed. Like, we teach these kids in isolation, but then it's more important or most important to teach them how to generalize those skills across different environments. Meaning, you can teach a child how to deal with money in a classroom, but how do you teach them how to go to the store and buy something, right? Or buy a sandwich, buy groceries, go to a vendor on the street, use a machine, right, for candy out of a vending machine or something like that. You have to teach them how to generalize those skills across different environments. And so that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about my dad and my grandfather, and as family, and then as these representing these universal concepts. Okay, give me a second to clear center and balance my energy again and see what comes. Okay, so when I was talking about the nails and I was talking about the orb that was 6 inches long, it created a crack or a fissure in it that looked like this fault line. And I wanted to talk about that really quick. I didn't when I was talking about the that situation, but I'm just going to bring it up real quick and read this. The fault line, the fissure, the crack, the wear line. Imagine walking across a frozen lake that begins to crack before your eyes. No matter how optimistic and brave you might be, panic ensues. You become fearful and tense and long for stable ground. Such is the energy of the fault line. It's the energy of walking on eggshells, of precarious dynamics, of sensing what is ready to break open into chaos. It's likely this cracking open is overdue, as fault lines develop slowly and naturally from underlying elemental pressures. This card comes as a patent warning not to deny the shakiness that's afoot. It's much better to prepare yourself for change than to walk along the fault line pretending all is well. There is no easy fix for the situation at hand. It will require a foundational shift that alters the current dynamics from the ground up. And so this is exactly where my marriage was when I talked to the therapist about next steps. I do find it not so ironic that this is what I saw when that orb cracked, but it was black and it had red lava going down red like lava going down the middle of that. And I would say that, walking on eggshells is a very good way to describe where I was in my marriage right before we talked about next steps, or actually when we started marital counseling. I also feel like this is very indicative of the message from my friend that I had known, and the ringing is going way up in my ears right now. That's an affirmation, among other things. My friend that said things can change on a dime. This is the fault line. Things are going to change on a dime. What's this last line it said? There is no easy fix for the situation at hand. It will require a foundational shift that alters the current dynamics from the ground up. That's where we're at. That's what's going to happen. There's going to be a foundational shift from the ground up. Give me another second. So, every time I close my eyes, my grandma came in very strong at the beginning of this video. My father came in very strong at the beginning of this video. And then the raptors came in at the end, and my grandmother and my father were there. And there's a lot. So there's a lot of celebration. I don't think there was that was definitely synchronicity, that siren, but there's a lot of celebration because the change is happening, but we have to go through the change, and so it's going to be abrupt, and I think it's very important for people to be aware of it. But the best thing you can do is to maintain clear, centered, and balanced energy and observe from a higher perspective. There's Pam Gregory says we're breaking down to break through, and I love that expression. I think it's very true. Everything's being broken down so we can break through. So I just encourage you to sit in your center, sit in your heart, and have faith and trust in the things are happening as they're meant to, and have faith and trust in the divine and in this transition, and open yourself up to the beauty that's coming to us. Okay, that's the best thing any of us and all of us can do. Faith. Okay, thank you.